The history of the New York Jets has not been one that has been very kind to either the franchise or the fans of the franchise since their inception about 62 years ago. Their only Super Bowl win was in 1968. However, that came at a time when the Jets were still in the AFL and had yet to move over to the NFL. And between the AFL and NFL, there were only 16 teams in the entire country. Since then, they have a 12-13 record in playoff games since that 1968 season. And really, the past 10 to 15 years have not been kind to the Jets, especially. They do have a couple of conference championship, back-to-back conference championship appearances in 2010 and 2011, I believe the years were. But especially since then, they've had one double-digit win season, and that came with Ryan Fitzpatrick as their quarterback, and they still did not make the playoffs that season. However, this is a season that if I was a Jets fan, I would be really excited for. I don't necessarily think the Jets are going to be able to shock the world and maybe make a run for the Super Bowl, but for sure this team has the ability to upset a few teams down the stretch, late stretch of the season, and be a team that when we look at them by this time next year, we're going to be considering them a real playoff threat in the AFC East. A lot of this has to do with the fact that they have had a lot of change in the past 12 months. They ended up getting rid of their head coach Adam Gase and replacing him with defensive coordinator Robert Saleh from the San Francisco 49ers, who, in my opinion, this was probably the best head coaching hire over the entire offseason. They did draft Zach Wilson to replace both Sam Darnold for, the 12 games that Sam Darnold plays a year / the 4 or 5 games that his backup plays every year, for 16 games of Zach Wilson. Offensively, they did go through a big overhaul in their skill position. Their wide receiver core last year consisted of guys like Brashad Perriman, Denzel Mims, Jamison Crowder, and Braxton Berrios. And now looking at it this year, it's going to consider guys like Corey Davis, Jamison Crowder, Keelan Cole, Denzel Mims, and Elijah Moore. Offensively, this team, with a new head coach and a new quarterback, the only thing that you want to do is make it as easy as possible on them, and they're doing that with Zach Wilson, making it as easy as possible for him, getting him some speed threats, getting him some guys who can catch the ball, and especially Corey Davis, who looked like he was really playing well during the preseason. If he can replicate that in the regular season, they're going to take off offensively. Running back is a position that is going to be a little bit of a weak point for this team. Last year, it consisted of guys like Frank Gore, LaMichael Pirine, Kalen Ballage. And now it's going to consider guys like Tevin Coleman, LaMichael Pirine again, and Ty Johnson as the number 3 running back. Really, they lose some leadership with Frank Gore being gone, but that's about it. I mean, Kalen Ballage was supposed to be a decent running back as a young guy, but it just never went through with him. Now with Tevin Coleman, who's had an injury history, LaMichael Pirine, who is not an incredible running back, and Ty Johnson, who I believe is a rookie this season, it's going to be a weaker position. I wouldn't be surprised if they do make a move for a veteran running back within the next few weeks. But with that being said, it's still a young team that's figuring some things out, and running back is just going to be a weak position for them at the time. Now, the offensive line is something that actually really, really excites me. They didn't have an incredible overhaul along their offensive line. They only switched out their left guard position. I believe his name is Alex Lewis, their left guard from last season. He gets replaced by second-round draft pick Elijah Vera Tucker. And along the whole entire offensive line, I'd say the only weak spot is right tackle with George Fant. But with that being said, I mean, right guard Greg Van Roten is a decent player. Connor McGovern is a decent center in today's NFL. Left tackle Mekhi Becton looks like he's the next real good left tackle in today's NFL. And Elijah Vera Tucker looks like he could be a really good player in both the run and passing game at that left guard position. So I think the offensive line being rebuilt and retooled around Zach Wilson, like I said, this offense is going to be able to take off if everything goes well. Last year, they were 32nd in points, 14th in turnovers, 31st in passing yards, 23rd in rushing yards, 32nd in third down percentage, and 24th in sacks allowed. The 14th in turnovers and 24th in sacks allowed number is something that I think is really good. I understand that 24th in sacks allowed doesn't sound really good, but when you have a young offensive line that a lot of people have been trashing over the past few years, being anywhere, being outside the bottom 5 in terms of sack numbers, I think that's good. 14th in turnovers is also really good for a young team on the offensive side of the ball who did not have a lot of talent. And 23rd in rushing yards, again, a number that doesn't look great, but it speaks to the offensive line. Even though it's young, it is a little bit better than it used to be. Now, moving over to the defensive side of the ball, really nothing is incredibly different. They are going to be switching from a 3-4 that they've been running the past few years to a 4-3 with Robert Saleh as the new head coach and de facto defensive coordinator for this team. Really, the biggest change is the fact that Robert Saleh is going to be calling the plays and calling the shots for the defense. Like I said, they do switch to a 4-3. So the defensive line, instead of just looking like Quinnen Williams, John Franklin Myers, and Henry Anderson, it's now going to look like Shaq Lawson, Franklin Myers, Folorunsho Fudukasi between him and Franklin Myers in that defensive tackle spot, and Quinnen Williams, on the other outside edge with Shaq Lawson. Now, linebacker is a position for the New York Jets who it is going to be a key position for this team, but they're going to be relying on some guys who are a little bit suspect right now in terms of their injury history. Jared Davis already went down and on IR. He probably is going to be coming back in week 7, according to Robert Saleh. CJ Mosley, who is an incredible inside linebacker, he's going to be getting paid $18 million over the next 3 seasons after this year, and he's a guy who has a long injury history with him as well. I mean, some other guys they're going to be relying on, Blake Cashman, Quincy Williams, Bryce Huff. It's just not a deep position for them at the moment. But with that being said, their secondary should be something that can, be relied upon within this season. They do have Marcus May, who's an incredible free safety, LaMarcus Joyner, who's an incredible just defensive back in general. Justin Hardy is a decent corner, Bryce Hall, Sherrod Niesman. They have some decent guys in this back end of the team. And one guy who kind of is going to fill that, safety / linebacker role, his name is Hamza Nazir Eldin. I believe that's the right way to say his name. He's kind of, I don't know if you guys remember, but Fred Warner, who right now is possibly the best linebacker in the NFL, used to be a nickel corner when he was in college. And when he got into Robert Saleh's scheme, he became a linebacker. I don't know if that's the same exact kind of thing that we're going to see with Nasir Eldin, but if it does, I wouldn't be surprised if he has the same sort of trajectory that Fred Warner went on. I'm not saying he could become the best linebacker in the NFL. I'm just saying he could have a decent season under Robert Saleh, and that's something to be kind of excited for if you're a Jets fan. So what does this season look like if you're a Jets fan? Well, it's still going to be probably an under 500 season. That's something that, it should just be a given that this team is not going to look great within the first few weeks. I really like Zach Wilson as a quarterback. I think that he is probably the next great quarterback from this draft. However, he does not have incredible help in the running back room. He doesn't have the most help in the wide receiver room. I think Corey Davis is a decent number 2 receiver. I think Jamison Crowder can be a good 3. Keelan Cole is a good 3 as well. Elijah Moore might be a good young guy. And Denzel Mims is really just a speed threat for this team. I don't know really if he has the most help in the world to necessarily say that he's going to look incredible this year. He might have a year like Baker Mayfield had his rookie season where we might have some hype for him as Rookie of the Year, but turnover issues and a team that is really bad is going to keep him from actually getting the notoriety he deserves. And defensively, even though I do think that Robert Saleh as the defensive coordinator and head coach of this team will be better than last year, that's not really saying much because the defense was pretty bad last year in every statistical category. So really all they're going to be looking to do this year is go from below average to slightly above to average. Just getting them better is really what this job of Robert Saleh is going to be this year, as well as the rest of the coaching staff over this year. So I really think this team could go anywhere from 6-11, 7-10. Maybe if everything goes right, they could go 8-9. But I also could see this team going 4-13. You have to understand, this team won 2 games last season. They were by far one of the worst teams in the NFL last year. And just adding Zach Wilson and a couple other okay pieces is not going to make your team go from 2 wins to 10 wins in one season. It's going to take one or 2 of these years where they go 6-11 or 7-10 to really understand what they have at the moment and figure out where to go from there, because there are a few key pieces missing. I almost said, I don't even know what I just said. They still have a few key pieces missing, and once they figure that out, I'm sure they'll be a playoff contender soon. But this year's not the year. 6-11, 7-10 is what I'd say they're gonna go. With all that being said, that's going to be the video for me. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you leave a like. If you didn't, make sure you leave a dislike. Any feedback from you at this point is much appreciated. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.